Welcome back. I am going to continue reading Elmer and the Dragon. We are on our last two chapters, so I will be reading chapter 9 and chapter 10. I hope you enjoy. Chapter 9, Farewell. I think I ought to be getting home, said Elmer the next morning as he ate the last 10 tangerines. How do you feel, Dragon? Fine. Why, I could fly to the moon and back. Good, said Elmer, because I think today is my father's birthday. He looked at the plates and the pots and the cups and the silverware and the bags of seeds spread all over the pine needles and asked, King, what shall we do with your part of the treasure? Dear, dear, said the king. Well, we can plant the seeds, but I guess we ought to put the rest back in the chest. But my gold, I must have my gold. I insist upon at least one silver spoon, cheeped the queen. Then I'll save out the seeds and a spoon and 3 pieces of gold, suggested Elmer, who was anxious to be off. Better make it 5 pieces of gold, said the king. I really ought to give one to Flute. Elmer packed the chest and gave the key back to the king. Shall we bury it again? He asked. I suppose so, said the king, with tears in his eyes. I hate to think of it way down there, but at least it will be safe from robbers. But never mind about putting back the dirt. We can do that ourselves. And here you can see the spoon, the pieces of gold, and the birds. So the dragon carefully lowered the chest into the hole while Elmer put away the shovel. Then Elmer packed his knapsack with the 3 bags of gold and the sterling silver harmonica, carefully wrapping the harmonica in a burlap bag left over from the rescue. Goodbye, everybody, and thanks for a wonderful visit, he shouted to all the canaries. You can count on me. I'll never tell your secret to a soul. Goodbye, Elmer, and thanks again, said the king, who was already busy giving orders to the other canaries about filling up the hole. And here you go. You can see what's happening. Flute rode on Elmer's shoulder, and the dragon walked back to the cliff. Goodbye, Elmer. Please give my best to your mother. She really was awfully good to me, you know. I will, Flute, and goodbye, said Elmer, wondering if he didn't have some little thing to give Flute. He looked once more in his knapsack and found that he still had 3 sticks of chewing gum and half a package of rubber bands. I don't suppose you'd like to have these, he asked. Oh, I love them, said Flute. I'll keep them with my gold piece, and I'll be even richer than the king because I'll keep my treasures where I can see them every day. Flute told Elmer and the dragon the best way to fly to Nevergreen City, and then Elmer hopped aboard, waving farewell to Flute and Feather Island. And here you can see them getting ready to fly off. And there's Flute looking at all of his treasures. Chapter 10, Elmer Flies Home. They flew and flew, the dragon trying hard not to look at or think about the wet, wet ocean. Elmer sat watching their shadow rippling over the waves beneath them, feeling washed by the cool morning breeze. The dragon was strong and well-rested, being nicely stuffed with skunk cabbages and ostrich ferns. And they hadn't stopped once when he shouted towards evening, I think I see land ahead. So do I, and I think it's the coast of Popsicornia, yelled Elmer. Yes, I'm sure it is. There's Firefly Lighthouse. It won't be long now. It's just a few miles up the coast from here. Where shall I land when I get there? Oh, and here's a picture of them. Flying closer and closer. Now that I'm free, I should hate to be put in a zoo or a circus or something. Well, it'll be dark soon. I think you could land on the wharf without attracting attention. Of course, we'll have to be quiet. They flew up the coast, passing the lighthouse and the village of Futoria in the town of Custard, and finally came to the outskirts of Nevergreen City. "There it is!" cried Elmer. "See, that dark patch is Evergreen Park. I live just across the street. Could you land on that long wharf just ahead?" "I think so," said the dragon, "but I do hope nobody sees me." He circled lower and lower and landed gently on the end of the wharf. Elmer slid off and whispered, "Gosh, it was fun knowing you. I'm going to miss you and flying and everything, and thanks so much for bringing me home." "It was fun, wasn't it?" sniffled the dragon, "and I'll never forget how you came all the way to Wild Island just to rescue me. By the way, Elmer, I really think you ought to have this beautiful gold watch and chain. I can't see it on me anyway. I don't even know how to tell time." "Are you sure?" "I could give it to my mother, but haven't I got something you'd like to trade for it?" "Well, as a matter of fact, I was wondering if you still had some of those delicious pink lollipops." "I have 4 left over," said Elmer, getting them out and taking off the wrappers. "Would you like all 4 at once?" "Yes," said the dragon. They stood there quietly in the dark, the dragon sucking 4 pink lollipops, and Elmer whispered, "Where will you go from here?" "I'll go find my family in the great high mountains of Blue Land," said the dragon, thinking of his 6 sisters and 7 brothers and his gigantic mother and father. "Ooh, I'd like to go there sometime too," said Elmer. "Well, maybe you will, but listen, I hear voices." "Men coming down the wharf. Quick, you'd better hurry. Goodbye, dragon." The dragon flew up into the darkness just as the 2 watchmen thumped by to make their rounds. Elmer hid behind a crate and heard one say, "Funny, I was sure I heard voices, and I know I heard something big flying just over our heads. Look, 4 lollipop wrappers," said the other watchman, who had been searching the wharf with the lantern. Said the first watchman, and then they walked back down the wharf. Elmer followed them at a distance, and while they were telling another watchman about the lollipop wrappers, he ran as fast as he could through the streets, through Evergreen Park, where he is hiding, all the way home. He leaped up the porch steps 3 at a time, yelling, "Mother, Daddy, I'm home! Happy birthday!" Mr. and Mrs. Elevator rushed to the door and threw their arms around Elmer. "Oh, Elmer, how glad we are to see you! You don't know how worried we've been these past 2 weeks. Where on earth did you go?" "I had an important job to do," said Elmer, staring at the living room sofa. "Why, there's my friend the old alley cat." "Yes," said Mrs. Elevator, "as much as I've always hated cats, I just didn't have the heart to turn her out. She came to the door the day after you left, and I kept thinking, Elmer loved this cat. I really ought to take good care of her. And do you know, I've grown awfully fond of her in just 2 weeks." Elmer rushed over to the cat and whispered, "I rescued the dragon, and he just flew me home. He was right where you told me he would be." And there's Elmer greeting his mom and his dad. And here they are in their house. "You did what?" asked Mr. Elevator. "Oh, nothing," said Elmer. "By the way, here's your birthday present." Elmer gave his father the 3 bags of gold and played Happy Birthday on the sterling silver harmonica. "And here's a beautiful gold watch and chain for you, Mother." "But where did you ever get these things?" gasped Mr. and Mrs. Elevator. "That's a secret. I can never tell," said Elmer, rummaging in the icebox for something to eat. Here they are receiving their gifts. And that is the end of this book. The next time we will start our next book. Our next book in this series is called The Dragons of Blue Land. So I think that Elmer and Baby Dragon will be reunited. We'll have to see what happens in this story.